we're going to jump right in with our 47-minute webinar. And real quick, an overview. We're going to talk about, our topic today is lapsed donors and how they can be re-engaged. So we're going to start with why it matters, share just a little bit of insider lingo, talk about why donors stop giving, why donors resume giving, and then how to do that and how to have fun. So glad everybody's here. And as we get started, I'm just going to start off with a question for the chat box. So in the chat box, please, what's your response? Why do lapsed donors matter? And so everybody take a quick moment to put in your response. Why do lapsed donors matter? I wonder who's going to go first. So Cassie says it's easier to retain those who have already contributed than it is to acquire new donors. Yeah, so research tells us that the easiest source for a gift is somebody who's already made a gift. Somebody says lapsed donor is somebody who already knows the mission well enough to support it, need to be re-engaged. Somebody said because donations matter. Yeah, love that. And what I'm going to say is in addition to that, donations matter, but donors matter. People matter. I think people matter. And so let's look at the numbers. Who was it? I think Albert Einstein said, not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that can be measured matters. Now, I didn't hear him say that personally. This is just on secondhand authority. So, but let me share a statistic with you. This statistic, I think, is one of those things that does matter. And research tells us, think about this, charities on average lose 99.7% of their donors every 7 years. Think about that. So the average donor retention rate is 39%. So in year one, if we have 1,000 donors and we're on average, at the end of year one, we're going to have 390 donors. Or in year two, we're going to have 390 donors from the 1,000 that donated to us in the first year. In year seven, it's not 0, it's 3. Think about that. 3 out of 1,000 are still giving to us. So if we are on average and we don't interrupt the cycle, everybody's gone in 7 years. We have to replace all of our donors every 7 years. Now, if you're a donor fundraising professional, you just show your hand in front of the screen. I want to get a look at everybody. This is confession, right? I am a fundraising professional. So, think about what the job we have is that every 7 years, we have to go out and find 100% new. So that's on average. And so what we're here today to do is to not be average. So who's interested in joining the ranks of those who are not average? Okay. Now, we're not wanting to be below average, but we want to be above average. So how are we going to do that? We're going to find ways to not lose 100% of our donors every 7 years. So before we jump into some of the specifics, let's just look at the some insider lingo. Who's already familiar with this term, LIBUNT? Okay, if you're not, we're familiar with it now, LIBUNT. What is LIBUNT? It is, that's just an acronym for somebody who donated last year, but unfortunately not this year. Quick question, I want to ask this again, just with show of hands. Right now, how many of you know the number of LIBUNTs that you have presently? Okay, Sonia does. Sonia, do you mind sharing your number? Just, if you're okay with that, just unmute yourself and what's your number?
I believe our number is, no, I have it the other way around. Our renewed donor rate is like 65%, I think.
Okay,
Who did give
So,
last year, and so I guess then you'd say 35.
so 35% of last year's donors are live bunts, right? So a question would be, how many donors is that? And then while you're at it, calculate how many dollars were given last year. And at this year, those same donors have given 0. So that's the cost of your live bunts this year. And it's important. Those are 2 important numbers to know, live bunts. Now you can go beyond that. And then there's side bunts, donors who gave some year, but unfortunately not this. So they gave sometime in the past, but not last year and not this year. So those are your side bunts. And again, calculate a number and calculate a dollar amount, because like whoever it was that started us off, Cassie, said it's easier to retain those who've already contributed. And so at this point, we're dealing with statistics. We're not talking personal yet, but how many donors and how many dollars are missing because of non-renewal or because of lapse. So if you don't know your live bunt, calculate it. If you don't know your side bunt, calculate it. And then there's another one. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with this. This might be a thing I made up. Whoops. Here it is. I can't even pronounce it. Tibletol. Anybody know what that is? Okay, that's somebody who gave this year, but unfortunately less than last. Okay, that's an important number as well. And a lot of times those who fall into this category, they simply go unnoticed because they gave in the past and they gave in the present. And so we think, okay, it's a continuing donor, and that's true, but we're going to use a term, this isn't maybe too polite, but they're underperforming their own standard from the past. So this is just some terminology that you can use to help yourself answer the question, how important are lapsed donors in our organization, or how important are underperforming donors in our organization. So let's see. We're gonna now go from the generic to the specific. So in the chat box, please, I'd love for you just to real quick fire off your response to this question: why do donors stop giving? Why do donors stop giving? So everybody, fingers on keyboards. Let's see what you have to say. While you're doing that, I'm going to have a nice hot drink. They stopped being asked. They lost interest. They're not engaged. They didn't receive thank you or stewardship. Lack of appreciation, lack of communication. Oh, expired credit card number. They're not asked. Lack of organizational communication. Yeah, different values. A lot of different reasons. Now, please don't stop. But here's my next question. And again, if you'll just respond in the chat box, how do you know this stuff? Cassie asks, okay, Cassie, I'm going to virtually reach to Oklahoma City and just give you a virtual hug. I love it. You ask, you talk to the donors. We talk to them often. We do donor surveys. Okay. And here's what I love about the responses we're seeing so far is it doesn't say we don't know, we just guessed. Because here's what I want to say, it's easier to guess than it is to ask, but we're almost guaranteed when we guess, we're going to guess the answer wrong. And guesses are okay for masses, but guesses don't work well with individuals. And even though we're going to talk about some very specific techniques, and in general, we're going to talk more on the individual level, but everything we talk at an individual level has a corollary on the mass or on the group level. So, let's take it a step further. Here are the main reasons, and these have already been mentioned. Not profound, but it's important for us to know. Number one is neglect, and number two is offense. So I'm going to ask on number two, this is the confessions of the guilty, and I'm going to go first by raising my hand. Who would say that you have a personal story of donor offense? There was an offense, either institutional or individual, somebody stopped giving because they were offended. If you plead guilty, just show me your hand. Gary, you're raising your hand and smiling. I love that. So for the rest of you that haven't done that yet, you know, I don't want to wish it for you, except you can learn so much from offense. And in fact, Aaron and I, as we were preparing for this, he reminded me of a statistic, and I can't quote the source, but the ability to retain donors and to create donor lift is greater for a donor who has experienced offense and restoration than it is for somebody who's never been offended. Now, don't let that spur you to go out and offend everybody, okay? Bad idea. But the good news is, even if something has gone wrong, don't think about that as being fatal. It's an invitation to recover, invitation to repair, invitation to restore. So how many of us in our organizations, we're in the restoration business, one form or another? I'm working with a client right now. They restore people in poverty to prosperity. So, I mean, all of us in one way or another, we've got a restoration element. So anyhow, that's the offense. If there's an offense, oftentimes people stop giving. That's another way of them raising their hand and saying, hey, look at me. Neglect. There are a number of examples of neglect. I don't know, Aaron, do you feel up to sharing some of your recent thoughts, personal experience on neglect? Either way, yes or no? Okay, no, okay. So one of the things recently, we've been conducting a feasibility study, and one of the things that we're finding in a lot of the interviews, people said, you know, we don't know them, we haven't heard from them. So there's not an offense, but there is a neglect. There are different kinds of neglect. There's structural neglect, there's individual neglect, there's systematic neglect. There's all kinds of reasons. But if we do nothing, we will automatically commit if you would, the sin of neglect. Okay. So why people stop giving is out of neglect or out of offense. And then I'm going to call another one natural causes. And one of my worst donor stories comes from when a donor contacted me about an offense. And here's the offense. I sent this back in the days of direct mail. And you guys remember like stamps and envelopes and that stuff? So this was back in those days. I sent a letter to somebody, and they were deceased. And the parent at whose address that letter arrived, they were deeply wounded, understandably so. Their son had died. Major offense. So sometimes people stop giving because they stopped living. Okay. Sometimes they are sick, incapacitated, a variety of reasons. So, but we don't know. And so we do know it's natural for there to be neglect and offense. So the next thing I want to ask is another question. Let's go to the chat box. Why do donors resume giving? So I'm going to take another sip of my hot lemon ginger. Aaron, I hope you're doing the same. And why do donors resume giving? Somebody said a donor survey, a conversation with donors. They begin to trust the organization and support the mission. Love that. Engaging conversations, face-to-face meetings, see the impact of their gift. Yeah, we're gonna circle back to that here in a little bit. Cassie, I'm beginning to think you're reading from my notes. Love it. Let's see what else. Reengage via communication and impact. They're asked, their financial situation changes. Yeah, sometimes people's ability to give was interrupted. They hear compelling stories. I read your books. That's why they start giving again. Oh, that's why you know what I'm going to say. Good job, Cassie. Oh, have fun. So I'm going to oversimplify. And Cassie, since you read my books, you know that that's what I do is I oversimplify. But here's the main reason that that people resume giving. And Cassie said it. They're asked. They are asked. And I was thinking this morning about there was a hockey player. He had this famous quote, is Wayne Gretzky, and he said, "I miss 100% of the shots that I don't take." Well, in fundraising, we're actually luckier than Wayne. We can sometimes raise money that we're not even asking for. But what I want to say is the odds go up so dramatically when we simply ask for a gift, especially if we ask the right person in the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. You know, we do it right. But even if we ask poorly, we get better results in almost every occasion than when we don't ask at all. And so, so we know why people resume giving. So the next question in the chat box now, how can we re-engage lapsed donors? Real quick, I'd love for you just to share either a question or a comment how we can re-engage lapsed donors, and be as granular as you want on this or as general. Cassie says, ask for feedback. Yes, very definitely. You know, have you thought about this? One of the most precious resources a person has is their opinion. Have we asked for opinion? Ask personally, not through texts or emails. Mary says, apologize. Wow, where's Mary? Mary, wave at me. I see. Oh, you're in Orlando in front of the beach, right? Is this theoretical, or Mary, have you actually asked them or actually done an apology?
No, my team went through in a what they call the apology tour to re-engage a big group of lapsed donors. And I have gotten in front of lapsed donors, you know, since that's happened. And sure enough, they tell me about some appointment or something where, you know, my coworkers didn't mean it, but they offended them. And so I apologized to them for their experience with that person or whatever it is.
So, Mary, thanks for sharing that. And by the way, I love that. That's a new term for me, an apology tour, but I love it. And I'm going to package that up. I probably will put it in a book and sell it to people. I'll try to remember to give you credit for it. But I'm just curious, who would say, again, by show of hands, that you've done what Mary did and what I've done? That's actually apologize, whether it's for your own offense or an organizational offense, where you had to step up and just say, I'm sorry. Wow. If you haven't done that, please do. And so I'm speaking as a guy. You know, I've heard that guys can't apologize, but I've had to learn that a long time ago. And I appreciate Gary's note that says more donors have been offended than most organizations realize. And so anyhow, when there's not a gift, I'd say let's make an assumption. We must have messed something up, either actively through an offense or passively through neglect. And so let's talk just a little bit more about how we can re-engage lapsed donors. And you know, Cassie was ahead of me. There it is, Cassie. So a lot of the thoughts that I'm going to share either come out of or are an outcome from my first book, Asking About Asking, Mastering the Art of Conversational Fundraising. And I mean, you've heard me say that I love the individual relationships and conversation, but we can't have conversations with every one of our donors on a regular basis. But so sometimes the conversation is in some kind of a mass form. It may be an email, a survey, you know, a direct mail, some kind of something like that. But conversational fundraising, I'm going to offer some tips to re-engage lapsed donors, and I think there's six things here. So I want to encourage you to have a conversation, right? and start with this. So in your mind, in fact, right now, please don't put this in the chat box. But right now, would you just write down the name of a lapsed donor? Because I want this to be real for you. Okay, we're not going to share this with each other, but just write down the name of one donor that gave either last year or some year, and they haven't given this year, or perhaps it's that underperforming donor. You know, maybe they gave a six-figure gift last year and it's 5 figures this year. But yeah, please write down one name. Okay, because I want to walk us through a process. So reach out to that person. It may be a phone call. It may be over lunch or coffee. But here's the formula. Number one, thank you. So what are you saying thank you for? Thank you that you're not giving anymore? No. What are we saying? Thank you. You've contributed in the past. And the partner to that, somebody mentioned it earlier, and that is impact. Thank you. You gave a gift 10 years ago. Here's what your gift did. My background is higher education. Your gift helped someone, a freshman student, make a second semester when otherwise they'd have had to go home. So what impact did that gift make? Thank the donor for that. Number two, I'm curious. Now, this isn't where you say, I'm curious, how come you're not giving anymore? What's wrong with you? Wrong language, right? But I'm curious, why did you first give? And again, use your own language for this. I'm curious, why did you make your first gift? But find out why they started giving. And you want to hear that. But perhaps equally important is for them to hear a reminder of why they first started giving. And my guess is, more often than not, here's what you're going to hear. I started giving because somebody asked me to. And that's usually why people start giving, is because they're asked to. So this your conversation. Thank you. Report on the impact. I'm curious, why did you first give? And then here's number three, I noticed. So what did you notice? I noticed it's been a while since your last gift. Do not say, I notice you're a lie bunt. Y'all are way too smart to do anything like that. But I noticed it's been a while since your last gift. And then follow that up with, may I ask? Has something changed? So this is an invitation to find out about an interruption. You'll notice that with the exception of the first one, there's a place for a response. So don't just talk through a script. Make an observation, raise a question, stop talking, and listen. Even if there's a pause, a silent moment, a pregnant pause, be okay with that. Ask a question, stop talking. When we ask a question and stop talking, it's a reinforcement that we're listening for an answer. If we ask a question and keep talking, it invalidates the question. So let me ask, I've got a couple more things here, but before I go on, in the chat box, what would you say is hard about what we've outlined so far in the conversation about how to restore? In the chat box, what's the hardest thing? Jay says four figures would be nice. I don't think we've seen more than a 5-figure gift. Yeah, I agree. What's the hard part so far about the formula on the screen? Something, nothing? How does this strike you? Okay, Cassie, I really appreciate your candor there. It's hard to hear the feedback, especially if it's not good. I agree. You've simplified the conversation to create an opportunity for an authentic engagement. LaShonda, I love that you pick up on that word authentic. If we can't be authentic, we're not ready to have that conversation, right? But it is vulnerability. But here's the thing, something is broken, right? Something's broken. We know it's broken, they know it's broken. And if we don't ask, we're both just agreeing to ignore a real thing. And so when we do ask, at least gives us an opportunity to find out what it is. Most of the time, you're going to find out that whatever is broken, you didn't broke it. Bad language there. It's broke, you broke it, but it's still broke. And so we may not be responsible for the break, but we do have the opportunity for the repair. And so after we ask, and I didn't even put this on the screen, and you know, for me, it's so natural, but when we ask, whatever the thing is, look for something that you can apologize for. I haven't heard from you in 6 years. I am so sorry. Don't make an excuse. But here's what I encourage. I'm so sorry. You know, we can do better than that. So leave with an aspiration. If it's you, I'm so sorry. I was asleep at the wheel. I was in a coma for 6 years. I just woke up. Gary reminds us that sometimes we don't get to the underlying cause that caused the donor to stop. So this is a great opportunity to do that. Guy, thank you for the reminder. Donors want to see us. They want to see us succeed. They welcome the opportunity to tell us how to succeed. Wow, don't you love that? Thanks, Gary. So may I ask, then we ask, and then respond, I'm so sorry. We can do better than that. Or here's another one, if this is appropriate, what would have to happen for us to bridge that gap? You know, we dropped the ball. We wounded trust. I'm curious, what would have to happen for us to regain your trust? Okay, that's not an accusation. It's not a blaming anybody. It's an exploration. We dropped it. We want to pick it back up. What would have to happen? Now, I'm going to tell you a really quick story. Yeah, we have time for this. This was a conversation not with a major donor, but with a mega donor. I think at the time of this, that donor may have been historically the largest donor in the history of the organization. And here's what he said: I'll never make a gift as long as, and he gave a specific name, as long as he's still the CEO. I'm not the CEO. I report to the CEO. I'm thinking, how am I going to deliver this report? They would be glad to make a gift, but not as long as you're the CEO. So they already answered the question for me, what would have to happen? So now that's it. I'm not responsible for naming the CEO, right? So what do you think I did? Well, we did what you started about talking at the very beginning, and that's treating people like people. And we treat this donor like they matter. And I believe the donors matter more than donations. People matter more than money. Givers matter more than gifts. We just continued, even in a more intense and intentional way, to steward the donor. I want to tell you the good news. The donor that was so convinced and so convincing when they said they'd never give again as long as he was CEO, they were wrong. They changed their mind. And certainly I can't take any credit for that. But what we didn't do is to accelerate the neglect by going to cold on them. Okay. So may I ask, I'm so sorry, what would have to happen? And then would you consider? So in the Libent situation, let's say, picking on Cassie again, she knows her numbers, 35% of donors are Libents. Let's say we're on a calendar year and that it's September 13th. And so we've got the rest of September, October, November, and December is the year. Would you consider making a new contribution sometime this year? That's an ask. Would you consider making a gift by a certain point in time? It's far enough away that it's not too soon. It's soon enough that it's achievable. So that's an ask. And then here's what I want to end up with, and that's thank you. So at this point, what are you saying thank you for? Did they make a gift? Probably not. Did they agree to make a gift? Maybe yes, maybe no. But either way, what they did in the process was they gave you something that you simply didn't have before. They gave you the gift of their time, their opinion, their candor, their authenticity. Would you consider, and thank you. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for trusting me with your opinions. And here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pause and just ask for some thoughts, opinions, reactions in the chat box. Somebody says, some of us want to walk into a situation that was caused by the previous administration. Yeah. Or some of us walk into it. Yeah. And sometimes I didn't create it, you didn't create it, but it was created. How are we going to get out of it? Let's find a path forward. So thoughts, comments, questions as we think about how to re-engage lapsed donors. So before we take our next step, I'm going to ask, let's see, if your camera's off, turn it on for a minute. And I'm going to ask you to give me a number. And maybe there'll be someplace between 1 and 10. Would you show a number of how many specific things you've picked up on so far that you would say, I can put this to use beginning either today or tomorrow? 3, 2, 1, show me your numbers. I see a 2, a 1, a 3, 5. We got an overachiever. Hey, Rondalyn. Who else? Let me see. I see a 3 and a 5, a 2. Wow, awesome. So on the next slide real quick, just want to underscore, have some fun with the process. I mean, don't get all stressed out and act like this is something you have to do and it's the worst possible thing. Look at this as an exploration. You have an opportunity to learn something that you don't already know from somebody who matters and to whom your organization matters. Have fun in the process. So let's just take a moment. Let's take Q&A, question response. Anybody have a question? We've got just a few minutes left before we wrap up our 47 minutes. And I want to make sure that they count the most for you. Gary says, don't assume anything. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Gary. Let's see, invite lapsed donors to an engagement event that includes sharing the impact of their gift. Thank you, LaShonda. Beautiful idea. Cassie just pulled the live button list. What? Are you kidding me? 12,381 donors who gave last year but not this year. How would you scale this for more direct response type donors? You know, my first reaction with a number that big is I would look for like a 1 or 2 question survey that has an open comment component to it. So look for something that they can quickly respond to, and if they want to take more time, they can kind of initiate that. And with the 12,381, I've got one word, Cassie, for what that represents, and that's potential. You got enormous potential. Let's see, Sonia says, how do you recommend initiating a call with a lapsed donor? Okay, so let's see, Sonia in Kansas City, right? Here's what I would suggest. First of all, Sonia, how long have you been in the organization? Long time, short time?
5 years.
5 years? Okay. So for somebody who, let's say you've been in the organization 5 months, you can leverage this theme. You know, I'm kind of new here. And so I have some questions I'd love to pick your brain. I've only been here 5 years. That might not quite sound the same. Okay. So, but here's what I would suggest. We're in the process of really evaluating the way we connect with donors. And I'm wanting to get some input from some people who have been a part of our support team in the past. I wonder if we could get together, however that is. I'm wondering if we could connect. I've got just a handful of questions I'd love to ask you.
And that's via an email. You
Could be an
start with
email,
that
could be a
to
phone
set-
number.
Or
I
do
mean-
you just, or do you like to just pick up the phone and call people?
Yeah, so let me answer that with kind of a ratio. So let's think 1 to 1, 1 to few, and 1 to many. So on your gift chart, the people who are at that leadership level, we should be interacting with them on a 1-to-1 basis. So Sonia, that's going to be something where you pick up the phone and have that individual conversation. In the middle of the gift chart with our major givers, that's where we're probably going to be 1 to few. And we may want to, somebody suggested inviting donors to an engagement event. Okay. And so there you're going to do that, not one-on-one, but a few. And that few, I mean, for Cassie, it may be a few hundred. For somebody else, it may be a dozen or a few dozen. For those who are in the general gift category, that's where we're interacting 1 to many. And that's probably going to be more the email, some kind of a web visit, a text survey, that type of thing. So anyhow, that would be the approach is, again, you're asking for people to share with you their most precious resource, and that's their thoughts and opinions. I mean, I don't recommend, like I said earlier, you are a lapsed donor. We consider you a libunt. What is wrong with you? Right. So look for a way to engage. Yeah. Somebody else, a question as we come towards wrap up. While you're thinking about that, and if you have one, feel free to ask. But the next thing I want to ask, and again, if you'll go to the chat box for this, what would you say is your top takeaway? One of the things that Aaron and I are constantly doing is working to refine what we do and how we do it, and having direct feedback from those of you who took time out to join us today is very important. So for you, what would you say is the number one takeaway? If you'll just put that in the chat box, regaining donor trust. Yeah, good point, Guy. Thanks for sharing that. Everybody else, get those fingers to working. Number one top takeaway for you. What would that be? Somebody says provide a mechanism. Let's begin with the first step to Rome today. Yeah, re-engage in a meaningful way. Don't write people off just because they stop giving. Yeah, apologies are necessary and appropriate. The only way to restore what's broken is to start with an acknowledgement and regret or grief around what went wrong. Yeah, thank you, Sherry. These principles can be applied to planned, or can these be applied to planned and legacy givers who have lapsed in communication? Absolutely. People are people. We know we need to contact our lapsed donors, so the conversational fundraising will be a great way to start that process. Okay, good. Encourage my team to re-engage. Gary says, make it as personal as possible. Yes. Patty, take advantage of my short time with the organization to meet our donors. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm new here, and I'm really trying to understand how we've worked in the past, what we need to do in the future, what's most meaningful to you. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for those responses.